Hey everyone, welcome to week 2. This week we're covering chapters 3, 4, and 5 and your first case study. I'm so glad you're sticking with us. You'll hear me say this regularly, but the invitation stays open. Let me know if you have any feedback regarding the course structure or content, or if you have any questions that you would like to meet to discuss live. This chapter examines attitudes and how they're linked to an individual's behavior and how the employee's satisfaction or dissatisfaction with their jobs affects the workplace. Let's get started. After working through the activities for this chapter, you should be able to contrast the 3 components of an attitude, summarize the relationship between attitudes and behaviors, compare the major job attitudes, identify the 2 approaches for measuring job satisfaction, summarize the main cause of job satisfaction, identify 3 outcomes of job satisfaction, and identify 4 employee responses to dissatisfaction. Attitudes are statements about or evaluations of a person's state of mind with regards to objects, people, or events. They're formed as a result of our observations, life experiences, upbringing, education, and social influences. They can be based on beliefs, feelings, or behaviors and can be favorable or unfavorable, positive or negative. Attitudes can change in the blink of an eye based on changes in situations or the smallest changes in contexts. Or attitudes can be swayed by long-term exposure to new information or ideas. You might change your mind in the blink of an eye about whether someone you meet at the gym is, quote, eligible based on context. They don't wear a ring when they're working out, but they do after they get cleaned up, and you notice it on the way out the door. There was a time when no one wore seatbelts. Individuals who resisted wearing seatbelts cited concerns about reduced mobility or being trapped in a vehicle to justify their resistance. However, the NTSB began a campaign showing devastated car crashes and talking about horrific preventable deaths. And between 1968, when all new cars were required to include seatbelts, and 2021, seatbelt use rose from 14% to 90%. Attitudes are made up of 3 components. The cognitive component is your belief in the way things are. The statement, my pay is low, is the cognitive component of an attitude. It's an opinion or a belief about the attitude target. Affect is the emotional or the feeling component of an attitude and is reflected in the statement, I am angry over how little I am paid. Affect can lead to behavioral outcomes. The behavioral component describes an intention to behave in a certain way towards something or something. So, I'm going to look for another job that pays better. Viewing attitudes as having 3 components, cognition, affect, and behavior, is helpful for understanding their complexity. Keep in mind that these components are closely related, and cognition and affect in particular are inseparable in many ways. Some variables moderate or impact the strength of the relationship between somebody's attitude and their behavior. These variables include the intensity and the stability of the attitude. Strong attitudes are more likely to guide actions, especially when they're relevant to the situation at hand. The specificity of an attitude, or how closely it aligns with a particular behavior, enhances the likelihood of the attitude shaping that behavior. So a general positive attitude toward exercise might not translate into a regular physical activity, but a specific positive attitude towards jogging in the morning might result in consistent running routine. The social context significantly impacts the attitude-behavior relationship. Social norms, expectations, and peer influence can either reinforce or deter the translation of attitudes into behaviors. These variables will impact the ability to estimate how a certain attitude will predict behavior. People are more likely to behave according to their attitudes under certain conditions connected to their personal values and their social expectations. On the surface, we tend to assume that people behave according to their attitudes. But if we think about it, we can all come up with examples of when attitudes and actual behaviors aren't aligned. After all, plenty of people support a particular candidate or a particular party, but they don't vote, or talk about being healthy, but they do unhealthy things. Cognitive dissonance comes from that inconsistency between attitudes or between behavior and attitudes. As humans, we want to minimize dissonance. It's uncomfortable for us, so we try to fix it. In order to minimize the cognitive dissonance between your conflicting attitude and behavior, you either have to change your attitude or change your actions. Here are a couple examples. If you've always placed a high value on financial security, but you start dating somebody who's financially unstable, you have two options to reduce the tension caused by the conflicting beliefs and behaviors. You can end the relationship and look for a more financially secure partner, or you can de-emphasize the importance of fiscal stability and focus on other important character traits instead. From an employment standpoint, employees may experience cognitive dissonance when they find themselves working lots of overtime while believing that work-life balance is crucial for their mental health and their job satisfaction. People are willing to live with some discomfort, but the degree to which that's true depends on the importance of the element that's creating that cognitive dissonance, how much influence the individual has in the situation, and the rewards that are available. The importance of the elements creating the dissonance, like how important is that new partner? How important is financial security? How important is our job? How important is our mental health or our job satisfaction? The degree of influence the individual believes he or she has over the elements. If an individual believes they have the ability to perform a particular behavior, then their attitude is more likely to drive corresponding action. This is evident in scenarios where self-efficacy plays a crucial role, like a person with a positive attitude towards public speaking actively participating in presentations. The reward that may be involved in the dissonance. I'm going to make a name for myself working all this extra stuff I'm doing, so it's worth the hit on my mental health. Or, nobody even notices I'm here, so what's the point? Our attitudes can be explicit and implicit. Explicit attitudes are those that we consciously aware of and that clearly influence our emotional reactions and behavior. Implicit attitudes are unconscious, but they still impact our emotions and behavior. The following conditions mean that we're more likely to have strong attitudes. You're an expert on the subject, you experience something personally, you expect a favorable outcome, you stand to lose something due to the issue, you have a passion about the subject, and you are comfortable expressing your opinions. Research suggests that across all job attitudes, organizational identification forms a basis for attitudes and behaviors. Organizational identification is the extent to which employees define themselves by the same characteristics that define the organization, or the extent that an organization and its members share the same goals, missions, and values. This could refer to any organization, like sports teams. I told you I'm from South Louisiana, so we're all Tigers on Saturday and Saints on Sunday. It could belong to a religion or a church denominations, so Jews behave like this or Muslims behave like this. Or it could be a profession, doctors behave like this, or this is our place of employment. I'm really proud to work at Southeastern. We're a small but mighty program. Here are some other things that we know about organizational identification. It strongly predicts our job attitude, and if employees experience an event like reduced pay after the event, downsizing, or event like canceled bonuses, then employees begin to learn things about the organizations. Well, maybe they don't value paying employees well. And then they begin to grow negative attitudes toward the organization. They begin to disidentify, and that affects behavior too. The field of organizational behavior focuses on how attitudes influence behavior in the workplace. Job satisfaction, job involvement, psychological empowerment, organizational commitment, perceived organizational support, and employee engagement. Job satisfaction is the positive feeling about a job resulting from the employee's evaluation of the job's characteristics. We'll talk about some of the specific characteristics related to job satisfaction on the next slide. But why do we care? Some people subscribe to the philosophy of work is work and you don't need to love it, you just need to do it. Live your life when you go home. And there's something to that. But if you're actually satisfied and you do have those positive feelings, then so much the better for you and the organization. Satisfied employees are related to higher sales, lower costs, and a stronger bottom line. Employees who are more satisfied with their rewards and recognition do more efficiently. And satisfied employees are less likely to leave and more likely to talk positively about spreading goodwill and making it easier to recruit. Job involvement is the degree to which people identify psychologically with their jobs and consider their perceived performance level important to their self-worth. Employees with a high sense of job involvement feel a certain responsibility toward ensuring that the job itself is done correctly and with high standards of competence. It's a key factor in effort, motivation, individual, and organizational performance. Psychological empowerment is the degree to which employees are able to influence their work environment and their belief in their competence, the meaningfulness of their job, and the perceived autonomy in their work. Research has consistently shown that psychological empowerment positively affects work engagement. When employees feel empowered, they're more likely to be engaged, experience higher levels of motivation, job satisfaction, and commitment, all leading to improved job performance and overall well-being. Organizational commitment can be characterized by three factors: a strong belief in and acceptance of an organization's goals and values, a willingness to exert considerable effort on behalf of the organization, and a strong desire to maintain membership in the organization. Employees who are committed will be less likely to engage in work withdrawal even if they are dissatisfied because they feel a sense of loyalty or attachment to the organization. Perceived organizational support is the degree to which employees believe the organization's values their contributions and care about their well-being. The more support they believe they're receiving, the more positive their job attitude will be. An important cultural influence on perceived organizational support is power distance. Power distance is the degree to which people in a country accept that power in institutions and organizations is distributed unequally. Organizations are considered supportive when they fairly provide rewards, give employees a voice in the decision making, and provide supervisors who are seen as being supportive. In low power distant countries like the US, people are more likely to view work as an exchange than as a moral obligation. So employees look for reasons to feel supported by their organizations. In high power distant countries like China, employee POS perceptions are not as deeply based on employer demonstrations of fairness, support, and encouragement. Employee engagement is the degree of enthusiasm an employee feels about their job. Highly engaged employees have a passion for their work. High levels of engagement are linked to lots of positive outcomes, including employee and organizational performance, higher levels of customer satisfaction, and lower levels of turnover and accidents. Disengaged employees have essentially checked out, putting in time but not energy or attention into their daily work, and this can be very costly. One study suggests that organizations lose up to $550 billion every year in lost productivity because of disengaged employees. So we just said that job satisfaction is one of the oldest and most critical attitudes that we look at in OB because it's so strongly related to positive and negative work outcomes. Other than the outcomes we already talked about, job satisfaction is related to organizational citizenship behaviors. These are discretionary behaviors that contribute to organizational effectiveness, but they're not a part of the employee's formal job description. Satisfied workers tend to have stronger performance and are more likely to support the organization's mission and goals, and they tend to serve customers better, and that translates into stronger customer satisfaction. Job satisfaction is also related to life satisfaction. Work is an important part of life for many of us, and it makes sense that our overall happiness is related to our happiness at work. There are two widely used approaches to measure job satisfaction: the single global rating method, which asks a single question about the job to determine job satisfaction, and the summation score method, which identifies key elements in the job and asks for the employee's feelings about each one of them. Both methods are valid and reliable and can be used for different purposes. The single global rating method isn't very time consuming and thus freeing time for other tasks. The summation of job facets helps managers zero in on specific problems and deal with them faster and more accurately. Some of the characteristics that are likely to influence job satisfaction include job conditions, the work itself, our pay, our personality, corporate social responsibility, our supervisors, and our coworkers. Let's look at each one of them. Interesting jobs that provide training, variety, independence, and control satisfy most employees. Having diverse tasks and responsibilities can enhance our job satisfaction. Factors like the physical workspace, safety, and comfort also play a role. A safe, comfortable, well-equipped environment fosters satisfaction. Having some control over your work and decision making can boost satisfaction as well. Monotonous routines, toxic environments, and feeling micromanaged and unsafe working conditions lead to dissatisfied employees. A strong relationship exists between how well people enjoy the social context of their workplace and how satisfied they are overall. Positive conditions with coworkers that offer interdependence, feedback, social support, and interaction with coworkers outside of the workplace are strongly related to job satisfaction, even after accounting for characteristics of the work itself. Personality also plays an important role in job satisfaction. Research has shown that people who have positive core self evaluations are more satisfied with their jobs than those with negative core self evaluations. A core self evaluation is made up of self esteem, self efficacy, that's an individual's belief in their ability to perform tasks, and an internal locus of control, that's believing that your actions influence outcomes. Pay has an influence on job satisfaction and our overall happiness, but not as much as we might think. Typically, once a worker reaches a standard level of comfortable living, pay has a smaller impact. Corporate social responsibility, or CSR, reflects an organization's self-regulated actions to benefit society or the environment beyond legal requirements. CSR plays a role in job satisfaction, especially for younger generations. CSR allows employees to serve a higher purpose. Organizations practice CSR through environmental stability initiatives, nonprofit work, charitable giving, and other globally attuned philanthropy. Employees whose personal values fit with the organization's CSR mission are often more satisfied. So we've talked a good bit about job satisfaction, how to influence employee satisfaction, and the benefits. Let's spend some time talking about what happens when employees are dissatisfied. This graphic is the exit, voice, loyalty, neglect framework. I don't think this model is in your text, but the description is. The model is helpful to visualize the consequences of dissatisfaction, at least for me. Exit is just what it sounds like. It involves directing behavior toward leaving the organization. It may or may not include the actual departure, but it does include both looking for a new job, updating or distributing your resume, as well as the act of resigning. Neglect involves passively allowing conditions to get worse. It might include an employee's chronic absenteeism, reduced effort, or increased error rate. People who are dissatisfied with their work become frustrated and they might look for ways to get even with their employers. Exit and neglect behaviors are linked to negative outcomes and counterproductive work behaviors, such as lower productivity, higher absenteeism, and turnover, substance abuse, stealing at work, undue socializing, gossiping, and tardiness. Voice and loyalty are constructive behaviors that allow individuals to tolerate unpleasant situations. Voice involves actively and constructively attempting to improve conditions, and it includes making suggestions and union activities. Loyalty involves passively, but optimistically, waiting for conditions to improve. It involves trusting the organization and its management to do the right thing. Job embeddedness refers to the combined forces that keep an individual from leaving their current job. It includes factors like personal connections, community ties, and the perceived cost of leaving. High levels of job embeddedness result in an increased commitment to the organization and can be closely linked to job satisfaction, overall well-being, and the reduced probability of turnover. Managers still may not get it. Despite the empirical evidence that job satisfaction can affect organizational outcomes, many managers are still unconvinced about the role that job satisfaction plays in their own success. Or they falsely believe that employee satisfaction is high when it isn't. Regular surveys can reduce gaps between managers think and employees feel and what they really feel. Employees generally like to share their opinions, especially if they believe somebody cares about their responses and will do something with the information. Employee service surveys, when done well, can increase satisfaction. However, if employees believe giving their opinion will result in retaliation or is a waste of time, it can have the opposite effect. Of the major job attitudes, job satisfaction, job involvement, organizational commitment, POS, and employee engagement, job satisfaction level is the best predictor of behavior. Pay attention to your employees' job satisfaction levels as determinants of their performance, turnover, absenteeism, and withdrawal behaviors. Measure employee job attitudes objectively and at regular intervals in order to determine how employees are reacting to their work. But make sure that if you're asking for their opinion, you're actually going to do something with that information. You don't have to follow every suggestion, but you should at least acknowledge the information you receive and consider addressing the issues that come up. To raise employee satisfaction, consider the fit between the employee's work interests and the intrinsic parts of their job. Create work that's challenging and interesting to the individual. High pay alone will not create a satisfying work environment. With all of the opportunities for different types of work, few people will put up with terrible bosses for good pay. And if they do, they're likely engaging in those counterproductive work behaviors to even the score. Okay, that's it for Chapter 3. Let me know if there's anything you think I should know, and I'll see you soon for Chapter 4.